start again for those who are online and didn't hear that. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along this afternoon. We're hoping that we can burst some myths or change some views about, and just kind of make sure people are aware of what's required for academic promotion, both from the perspective of people who are interested in going for promotion, but also from the perspective of people who are line managers and supporting people to go forward. And in the school, we're very eager to try and make people aware of what you need to do to get promotion, make sure that people feel it's a transparent process, and so that people actually go for promotions when you're ready to and get past those opportunities, but also can also save you going thinking I'll go for this post or I belong in grade whatever if actually you don't meet those criteria. So I think it's about trying to make it more transparent about what's happening, and I know that everybody who's here today will be open to questions today, but also more importantly in the coming days, weeks and months, if people have something that's still burning and they can't, and they're uncertain of what they should be doing. So this is what we're going to have today. I'm going to try and speak for not too long because I know that Shelley has another pressing appointment somewhere. But I'm just going to give my general introduction. Shelley will talk about understanding. Julian's going to be talking about myths surrounding promotion, and Catherine's going to talk about experience of a newly promoted ECR. So used to be people didn't feel they knew very much about promotion criteria in our school. That has increased, but we really would want to be more up at the 100% end. So that's why we keep doing these promotion criteria workshop each year to try and, one, be a reminder, but also just to try and keep raising awareness. And why do we want to encourage people to go for promotion when they're ready? Well, we think people should be rewarded for your efforts, and if you're actually now moving on and progressing and in your career, then it's appropriate that you should get the benefits from that, and it is indicators of success and esteem. And also, as you progress up at the different grades, then you do get to take on more responsibility and do more things, which some people want to do. Now, some people do not want to be pursuing promotion, and that's absolutely fine too. So it's not forcing people to do it, but also just to make sure that you have the opportunities. And for some people, it helps to keep things more exciting, more interesting, and that's what they want to do. And if you are wanting to go for promotion, we want to make sure that we are helping you to succeed. And also from the wider university's point of view, helping people to get promotion here. We'd rather, if you're good, that you stay here and get promoted than go off to Edinburgh or somewhere else. So we'd rather retain you. Basically, we want to be developing everybody's career. And from the university's perspective, it's actually better if we've developed your career, that we then get it as you become even better and more experienced, that actually we can use your talents and not just have trained you to go somewhere else for the benefit of it. But also, we think it's good for morale to see that people can get on and develop their skills and career and learn and go forward. Are there any downsides to promotion? Well, I guess probably the downside, people might say, if you've gone into the room and you've applied and you've been unsuccessful, I suppose the downside could be that risk of rejection or not succeeding. And I tell people this because it's true, and people probably don't believe me, but I could actually paper all this room with all my rejection letters over the years. So I don't think it's a reason not to go for something. But on the same time, we don't want you to waste your time. And if you do not meet the criteria for promotion, then what we should be doing is working with you to see what would you need to do to be successful and meet those criteria. And really, the university has things very clearly lined. So I think you should visible to staff, because they have these promotion criteria. And this is your exam book. And the thing you should be looking at, you should look at those promotion criteria, whether you're in learning and teaching or research and teaching or professional services staff, and look at the grade you're on and what are the criteria, and look at the grade that you're wanting to go to and what do they say. Because this is very much like sitting an exam. You just have to answer the exam questions Do you meet these criteria? Can people hear me all right online? I don't hear any complaints. Yes. So these are very explicit criteria that are on the website, and they talk about things. If it's a research and teaching post or a research only post, then it will be things like outputs, grants, PGR supervision, teaching, and these are all benchmarked against Russell Group metrics. So that's other universities in the UK, and how do people across the universities perform in relation to these. We look at knowledge exchange and impact. We look at teaching and learning. Look at leadership, management, and citizenship, and factors of esteem. And obviously, what's expected will vary depending on whether you're going for grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, what grade you're going for. So what we expect of a professor is not what we expect of a grade 7 in terms of number of papers and amount of grant income and things like that. And this, if you go to the pages, this is the kind of thing you'll see. So this is just an example. So obviously learning and teaching have slightly different criteria, and you'll see them, but this is the one for the research and scholarship, and it's just showing you grades 7, 8, and 9. And it goes through outputs, and also it's not just about quantity, it's about quality of outputs. So they're trying to say, if you're going, for instance, for a grade 7, then at least you should have at least 2 outputs should meet the REF criteria of 3 or better, which means that they're kind of world-leading type research that you're doing. It looks at award contribution, that you've actually been contributing to successful grant applications, if it's a grade 7, that you've got some research project supervision, impact, that you're involved in public engagement. So it's these different things, criteria, that you will see on the website, learning and teaching practice, the things that you've done. And this is why we encourage people, for instance, if you're a grade 6, contributing, for instance, to designing or marking of assessments and giving feedback can help you in your promotion criteria. Now, there's these different domains, section leadership and management, esteem, what are the things that you'd be great. The thing to say is you don't need to tick all of the boxes. You need to tick a preponderance of them. So you might not succeed on the esteem, but if you tick all the other boxes, then you would be able to be regraded. So it's important to realise that it's not just, you don't have to get them all, but you have to get most of them and to be able to tick those out. So it is very much a checklist, and you just need to work through it methodically. And I think that you want to look at it honestly, to have an honest appraisal, and it's good to have your line manager should be looking at it with you, and you should have other people look at it and not just say, oh, you're just great, but say, do you meet those criteria? So share the papers, share the grants, and be able to write down for those boxes. And I tell people at my annual reviews that I do with them, if they're interested in promotion, to say they should be keeping a continual kind of look at those domains and be gathering the material, the information, and putting them under those domains as they go along. And let's see how you're doing, and have a look at that and try and work on that. And so very much treating it like a grant application. This is not something, if you try and do this the night before the deadline for the promotions, it's a bit like writing grants. Jerry Graham across in the college will say that actually the chances of success for a grant are, related to how much time gets put in, and those grants that get put together in the last 4 weeks are the least likely to be successful. And the same goes for this. And it is this: read the exam question, look at what it's asking you to do. If it says you need to have at least 2 publications that are would be deemed high quality, and then you can go to the REF criteria. So what we're looking at is originality, the robustness of the methods, the difficulty of the research that you're doing, the likely potential impact, importance. Are they novel? So it's these things that make things high quality. So it's not which journal you publish in, but actually the type of work that you're doing. And you only have a few words. It's quite tight, the number of words you're allowed to put in each section. So be concise and to the point, even kind of bullet pointing what it is you've done. And try and be very much you know, something that a lay person can understand, because people across the college are rating these. They're not necessarily expert in your areas, so you need to make it clear to them. If something is novel or important you do, you need to kind of justify that, make it convincing. And I think you really need your line manager to be looking at these and providing input to, and other peers. So you need to also get a good supporting statement, and that cannot be made up in a few minutes. But also be positive. One of the things I say for people who do for interviews for their fellowships is that we have this kind of slightly west of Scotland mentality, even from people who don't come from the west of Scotland. Once you've been here for a while, it's about being modest all the time and underplaying. I remember somebody who'd led late-breaking trials at the American Heart Association and all the rest of it. In a mock interview, I said, "Oh, tell me, have you had much research experience?" And they said, "Oh, well, a little." I said, "Oh no, I don't say you've had a little, you've had all this great stuff." So I think it's not making stuff up. You have to have factual information to underpin it, but don't undersell yourself, kind of put it forward. And as I say, if you don't apply, you definitely won't succeed. So I think that's trying to keep tightly for time for Shelley. That's me finished. I'm going to let Shelley come on, and then we'll take questions at the very end. But I think Shelley might have time for one or two questions before she zooms off. Okay. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, for those I've not met, I'm Shelley Hunt. I'm the P&OD business partner. I'm in the College of MBLS, and I support the School of Health and Wellbeing. So I'm here today to chat through a couple of, the Academic Promotion 2025. And in particular, I'm going to be covering an overview of the promotion process and timeline, eligibility and choosing when to apply, writing your application, and then some hints and tips that we can cover together. So I do have to rush away after this session, but any questions that we do have that can't be covered in the session, just email over, and I'm happy to chat to anyone or have sort of one-to-one discussions if we need to. So as discussed, this is our agenda today, although I know it's one slide deck of 4, so sorry. So first of all, I want to start off by talking about supporting career development. So career development is a continuous process, and your short and long-term goals are likely to change many times throughout your career. To help achieve your goals, there's so many development opportunities across the university that we can talk about. And I know essentially what I want to cover is what some of those are, and to clarify that academic promotion is one vehicle to achieve your promotion. There are other things that you can do in your role or expand your experience and development opportunities. So you are responsible we all are responsible for driving our own personal development, but the support that's available from a range of different sources. First of all, it can be development in post. It could be training programs such as Aurora or the University Management and Leadership programs. It could be PI development, or it could be other programs such as any opportunities via LinkedIn Learning or by networking and things. So there's lots of opportunities out there. It could be from new experiences that you gain in your current role. It could be from a change of environment. And then, of course, it can also be from promotion and post, which is what we're talking about today, via academic promotion. The university has a career pathway for academics that provides a structured path, but does have that flexibility should anyone want to flex and move career paths at any point in their career and switch to a different route. And then just a reminder that a promotion application is built over several years, so should absolutely form part of your PNDR discussions, your discussions with your mentor, your line manager and head of skill. So on the screen, you should see sort of a snippet section from our policy of the academic career tracks in question. You should identify with your line manager, mentor and head of school which track you're applying for. And as Francis mentioned, all the criteria are clearly outlined on the web pages. There's a separate document for each of the career tracks. And all of these career tracks come under the research and teaching job family. So when we talk about the R&T job family and the R&T track, they are different things. The R&T track sits within the wider job family. So is RLE. So as you can see from this table, there isn't currently a grade 10 R-only or research scientists because professor level role sits within R&T or LTS. So individuals applying from grade 9 to grade 10 will need to choose which track they want to apply for, and be mindful of that criteria in the document that's broken down in the document. Promotion to R&T professor normally requires an individual to demonstrate performance against the learning and teaching practice at a minimum of R&T grade 9 level, and that as well is outlined in the breakdown of criteria. And then finally, just to flag that applicants who successfully transfer from RO or any of the other tracks to R&T should within 5 years seek to secure the teaching certification, either PGCAP or the research recognised excellence in teaching scheme. So I know this has formed part of the slides we've done in recent years, but if anyone does have any questions about this in general and career tracks in general, please do let us know, and we're happy to chat through at any point. Right. So promotion criteria here is broken down as Frances provided the document on the web pages, goes into much more detail, but to give you an idea of the domains there, which we should all be aware of. There's P&DR, so these items will be discussed during the P&DR process, and that you'll be expected to meet a preponderance, but with the specific requirements applicable to each grade and track. So the preponderance for research and teaching are only LTS is you have to meet 4 of the 7. So of the criteria, demonstrate that you work. No one's ever going to meet all 7. Not going to, that's not typical. So as long as we can demonstrate 4. So requirements for promotion here breaks down really what we're looking for each grade level. And again, it's probably more helpful read in alignment with the other document, but just to give an idea of what we're looking for under each grade level by track. One thing to flag, and I will come to this later on in the presentation, is a change coming up in 2025 to do with academic clinicians. So the academic clinician track has historically been, people have been eligible if they have sort of a significant clinical contribution, and that has previously been defined as 5 FTE. Well, from 2025, that will be reducing down to 0.3 FTE. So academic clinician track might be an option for people where it hasn't been in the past. So now the promotion timeline. So I know this is a really popular slide because we want to know exactly when everything's happening next year. So as you can see, the portal will open on the 14th of January, and the window will be open until the 10th of March. In that time, we need the full application to be completed and your head of school also signed off. Local deadlines will apply for when the applications need to be shared with Frances or whoever's supporting with the completion. So please be aware, and I think Daniel mentioned that will be circulated in January time, so when the local deadline is for. The columns below outline when the panels will take place, and the college and LTS panels have a bit of a window, and you can see generally how it would run through the following months, and everything would be reviewed then. For outcomes to be available on the 27th of June, and the effective date of promotion on the 1st of August. It's standard. So this is a process flow. This is really more for information, just to know, just to visualize kind of how it runs. So as you can see, once you complete your application on the portal, you submit to your head of school. Frances will add a statement and submit on your behalf by the 10th of March. Depending on where your application sits on your grade, it will then route to either one of 4 panels, either the main panel, the LTS panel, advancement panel, or zone movement applications will go really. In terms of the main panel, that sometimes can be broken into subgroups depending on volume of applications, but they all will report back into a main panel. And then once everything's been reviewed and decided, we'll all go to the board of review for final decision. For panel compositions, I'm not going to go through line by line, but just to give you an idea of who sits on each panel, and just to share a bit of a visual. The LTS panel is still in discussion, so this is just indicative only, but this is who we anticipate will be sitting on the LTS panel. And of course, this will be confirmed ahead of launch. Now, promotion decisions will be determined on the evidence provided by each applicant and on the extent to which they satisfy a preponderance of the criteria. So as I said before, of the 7. All members will get access to all of these applications on each panel, fully review the form, and then convene with either the subgroup and then the main panel, discuss in more detail. Then that will pass on to Board of Review. Now, Board of Review is responsible for ensuring fairness and consistency across the university, so that's the final step to make sure that we're calibrated, everything's aligned, and then they are essentially approving or declining the promotion at that stage, and based on the panel's conclusions. So, eligibility and deciding when to apply. So who's eligible for promotion? So all colleagues within the research and teaching job family, which is the overarching, so all the R-only, LTS, and research and teaching track. Typically, individuals should be 12 months plus in post. And the reason we say that is just so that you've got enough time to demonstrate and be able to evidence that you've met the preponderance of criteria based on your experience at the university. So it's no other reason, it's so that that's enough, enough time. It can be waived in exceptional circumstances, but you need express approval from your VP or head of college to do that. If the application was unsuccessful last year, it will normally prevent an application being submitted the following year, but again, this can be waived with exceptional approval. But just to flag, if to get that exceptional approval, we really need to demonstrate that there's a significant new element to the promotion case that we anticipate a different outcome. So please do speak to your head of school if you think that's the case. And strongly encouraged, obviously, to discuss with your line manager, as I know everyone has felt that will be anyway, just to discuss whether it's the right time for you. So to support that, deciding when to apply, as I mentioned, your PNDR conversations, you will anyway be discussing this and discussing your career plan and strategically when is the right time for you to apply for promotion. It is your choice to apply, but please do seek your views from your trusted sources, your head of school, mentor, and PDR reviewer. Your head of school is required to provide an objective evaluation against each criterion and their overall judgment of the application. So not necessarily support of the application, not that I'm saying that's going to happen, but just to be aware, it's an objective view. So you have to flag that. Things to consider: is the timing right? What's in the pipeline? What's in the 6-year window? Consider your ECDP timeline if applicable. That's important too. And when you do reach out to a critical friend or you have someone review the application, please be objective and listen to the feedback. It's really valuable, especially if that individual's recently gone through promotion and has the experience of putting this application together. That'd be really, really helpful insight. I'd recommend that you meet with your head of school early to discuss, or mentor, or line manager. I'm not trying to fill Francis's diary with all these meetings ahead of January. If you're applying for a professor, you might need to schedule a discussion with your VP or head of college. And also, more of a practical point, if you start an application but decide not to apply, it actually will filter through to our central team. So if you do, be sure just to save a copy down and then delete it from the record. So you've got a copy of it, but it just removes it so you've not got an active promotion application in flight if you want. So, writing your application. So you must evidence that you meet the requisite requirements for the grade track and that the evidence that is sustained. Please do, as I mentioned, refer to the criteria and link your evidence to them. Write your application for non-subject specialists, so be careful with abbreviations and acronyms, and just assume that everyone on the panel has no idea what you do, and really, difficult sometimes to market yourself, but really do highlight your achievements and what you've done in the run-up. Avoid double counting and avoid simply listing what you've done. Ensure you've described what the impact of your work was, and really focus it back on you. So sometimes we see in applications that it's sort of the collective achievement, but really we want to know what you've done and what, this is your promotion application, so your involvement in that team. And use the terminology from criteria where you can. Use headers where appropriate, so structure it how you want to, if you want to make it really clear for the panel, and ensure your CV is up to date and included. There will be a template on the portal if you wish to have a look at as well. So this is just a few more hints and tips on the completion of the form. So for awards, supervision and outputs, awards and supervision first, this should be input manually into the form. It will auto-calculate the 6-year average, taking into account any periods of absence, which we'll cover in a future slide. There is a help text on the form to provide details on what to include, and the panel will take this into account. But as I say, I'll cover that in a future slide when it comes up. For outputs, the form will automatically pull through any publications from March 2019 to March 25 on the form. Please select your top 4 to 6 best outputs. Use the REF approach when assessing quality of outputs, and in advance of launch, make sure your Enlighten profile's up to date, because obviously we'll pull through. For the teaching certification, so this is for PG Cap or equivalent, so for grade 9 above, PG Cap is required. If you're in the R&T or the LTS track, it will be a requirement for achieving grade 9 and above. Please do check the academic promotion policy for any exceptions to this, because there are exceptions for R only and for clinicians. R only, I believe it's if you're moving track, you've got 5 years to complete it. For clinicians, it's a case-by-case basis, depending on clinical workload. Have your certificate ready to upload, and then if you are claiming exemption due to equivalent qualifications, please do have the academic and digital development ready to upload. For the HESA categories, they're allocated upon recruitment and recorded on the HR system. If it is more appropriate for you to assess your application against a different category and the corresponding Russell Group benchmarks, please do discuss with him as early as you can. So, head of skill statement. So, commentary on each of the criteria. So, it'll include commentary on each of the criteria, including whether the applicant meets the criteria. Confirms that to the best of their knowledge the information contained in the application is accurate. In some cases, it might be appropriate for head of school to have input from other senior academics, but the statement ultimately is written by them. For professorial applications, it'll be more of a consultation and discussion between senior academics. It will overall confirm whether or not they're supportive of the promotion overall, and whether you meet the grading track criteria that you've applied for. So that helps understand what will be included in the statement. So, for collegiality and clarifications for 2025. So, for professor applications, and to be honest, all applications, evidence of collegiality is required across a preponderance of the criteria. As I say, it's good practice for all grades to do it. Highlight any evidence of working in a collegiate and supportive manner, advancing career development of others in the pursuit of personal and university goals, and be really specific about what you did and the breadth and depth of the impact. In terms of clarification for 2025, I have already mentioned the academic clinician track, and I don't know why that's not in this little box, because it definitely is one. But in terms of the other one, for professor level impact, some clarification in there, the evidence of impact must be associated with underpinning research conducted by the applicant. For the LTS track, the panel process has been revised to have the separate LTS panel that was highlighted in the slide with the panel compositions. So that is still being determined, but it is a separate LTS panel, and that composition has been revised. And they will feed directly now into the board of review. And something to flag about LTS as well, there will be a session delivered in January by Moira Fishbacker-Smith that will go into much more detail about the LTS track and what to expect, and it will definitely discuss the differences there as well. So I would recommend anyone applying for LTS this round, please do attend that session. I don't know if the date's been circulated yet, but I'm sure it will in coming meetings. So colleagues have been promoted at the university have been with the university for less than 6 years, or have been promoted within the last 6 years. So Typically in academic promotion and considering all the criteria and all the information shared, it is work done at the University of Glasgow that is the primary information that's considered. However, to demonstrate sustained performance, you can include for context the University of Glasgow work in your additional comment section for awards and supervision. You do need to demonstrate how you're performing at the higher grades since joining University of Glasgow, but we appreciate if someone's only been here a couple of years, it's important to include that background context in the together. And the most important thing is to demonstrate that upward trajectory. If promoted within the last 6 years, you can include evidence predating your promotion, but the focus should be on what you've achieved since promotion to then obviously demonstrate how you meet or evidence meet the new criteria for the new level. Additional circumstances, as I mentioned earlier, there's a bit more information to share here. So personal circumstances can cover part-time working, it could be family leave, it could be ill health, so sickness absence over a longer period, and obviously COVID as well. There could be so many things that are additional circumstances that you want to make your panel aware of that should be taken into consideration. While there are adjustments made for additional circumstances of this type, we need to be really clear that those adjustments are made on quantity and not quality. So the quality should definitely still be there, but they would take into consideration quantity of outputs, for example, if you've been off for a significant portion, of the last X amount of years. Impact on output should be clearly outlined in the application, if that's the case, and any income or PGR data would be prorated, obviously, for periods of not working or part-time working there. For absences, there is a section on the form for adding absences of any long-term periods for reasons, as I say, family leave, long-term sickness absence, anything. We would ask that we don't include periods of research leave in the absence tab, because obviously that will contribute to the outputs that count in promotion, so that should be included. And please ensure these dates are input before we calculate the 6-year average, because it'll take them into account. As I said, sorry, I'm repeating what the slide said, but panels can adjust on quantity but not quality. Additional circumstances that have impacted you during the 6-year period, so this is where COVID comes in. You can include any information in there. Please be aware that all panel members will treat all the information contained in the application in confidence, but it is important for their consideration that they're fully aware of what some of these circumstances are, and that can form part of the discussion too. If your application is for a professor, it may be viewed by select professors during the consultation, but will also be treated with the strictest confidence. Now, panel members will have visibility of your current FTE. However, if it's changed, that won't pull all the way through. So if you have had an FTE change or reduction or increase, anything like that, please flag that in the application too, so they're aware of how it's changed, should you wish to make them aware for consideration. And then just a final line to say each case is considered individually, so please be as specific as possible on the circumstances, impact effect, adjustments sought, and what criteria is affected. So I'm kind of jumping ahead now to sort of the near the end of the process in the timeline, but where for professorial applications, references may be sought, where the college or LTS panel deems the application to borderline. So these references will help the board of review determine the final outcome. Once all the panels have reviewed, it's gone to board of review, you have an outcome, and as I say, that June date, you'll be notified when your letter's ready. That will come in the form of an email, with a link to the promotion portal. If successful, the promotion will be effective from 1st of August, and a new job description relative to the career tracking grade will be provided at that point, which you'd review with your manager. Newly promoted professors are asked to discuss and agree a professorial designation, and that happens with your head of school and head of college. And if unsuccessful, you'll be signposted to your head of school and provide more feedback. As a reminder, you're not normally permitted to apply the following year unless you have express permission. This will only be granted where there's been substantial progress made since the last application. So some final hints and tips. Just to echo essentially what Frances said, give yourself plenty of time to prepare your application and submit to head of school before the local deadline. Obviously, depending on volume of applications, there'll be quite a number to work through, so as early as possible. Emotions about your contribution. So as I said, ensure you articulate what your role was and the impact your work has made. And remember, the panel members can only base their decisions on the details contained within your application form. You don't assume that they know your work. Something else to say here is that I know that obviously as head of school, Frances will be in the panels, but she won't be able to add any information that's not in the application. If anything, it's just factual information if she's asked, but there will be no opportunity to sort of add any information. So a lot of time, is required to spend on these applications to make sure everything's in there, really clear, and everything's been considered. A critical friend is really helpful to review your draft application. And there's an email a copy function on Practical, so you don't have to download it and reformat it, email a copy and send it on. Point. Use data where appropriate to substantiate your evidence. And again, just the word limits can be quite tight sometimes. Try and don't duplicate and be really clear with what you're sharing. And then finally, be clear on what's required for your grading track. As I say, it's very rare someone meets 7. That's not the expectation. A preponderance is 4. The only exception where it differs from that 4, and we can all the way back and really confuse everyone, is the academic clinician, where you have to meet the clinical service one and then 3 others. So they have 8 domains, the 7 plus clinical service, and you have to meet clinical service plus for the clinician track. So I think the last slide is really just resource access. But I hope that's been helpful. Any questions I would love to see and answer. I know with my talking I've kind of gone over a little bit, but happy to chat to anyone one-on-one. And obviously good luck.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was just going to chat through some common myths about promotion and hopefully bust them for you. So for those that don't know me, I'm Julie Martin. I'm the current chair of the Athena Swan SAT. Okay, so we're going to just run through some common myths about promotion that I'm sure many people might have heard. So the first one is about funding. So this is obviously relevant to many R&T and research only staff. So there's a common myth that I can't be promoted if there's not enough money in the grant to cover the cost. But this is actually false. So promotion decisions, as we've heard, are made on whether or not you meet the promotion criteria. It's not based on funding and whether there is enough money in a grant to pay the higher salary. So grant funded staff are able to apply for promotion even if there aren't additional funds available within the grant. Another common myth is about funding end date, and again, you can't apply for promotion or you can't be promoted if you have a funding end date. This is also false, so you can be promoted on merit, again, whether or not you meet the promotion criteria, and it's regardless of whether or not you have a funding end date. Having a funding end date shouldn't prevent you from applying for promotion. Again, a common myth that many people might have hear or think about is that it's easier to get promoted in other universities. As we've seen, the University of Glasgow promotion process is quite transparent, really defined criteria, and the stated criteria do vary according to career track and grade that you're applying for, and all details are available online, and you should have a read of the relevant career track that you're wanting to apply for. So again, we've seen this earlier this afternoon, but thinking about preponderance, if you're in research only track, and for LTS staff, it is slightly different in terms of needing to meet certain columns and then 2 or more across other criteria. Women are disadvantaged. So again, sometimes people might think that promotion form or process disadvantages women, but actually our school has a high success rate for promotion for both women and men. And we can see on the table here, so these are promotion success rates over the past nearly 10 years. And we can see that there is a good success rate for promotion for men and women. Again, working part-time counts against you. So we've heard from Shelley that there will be an adjustment made in terms of your FTE if your FTE has changed over the past few years. And our school again has a high success rate for promotion for people who work part-time. So again, this is since 2013-2014. There has been both successful and unsuccessful promotions for part-time staff, male and female. And in 2022-23, 2 promotion applications were successfully made by part-time staff, 1 male and 1 female. So there is a history of, or a pattern of, successful applications for part-time members of staff. And that's across, I suppose, all the grades as well. It's quite good to see that. Career breaks count against you again. This is commonly a concern amongst people, but the committee, as we've heard, takes into account whether people have been part-time or have had significant absence due to a variety of reasons, and it's important to check that on the application form. If you have had time away for whatever reason, just check that that's accurate, and you might want to discuss that in your additional comments section. So again, this myth that you can't be promoted without a PhD. So again, research assistants can be promoted from grade 6 to grade 7 without a PhD. So this might be if you're at the top of the grade 6 scale and you meet a preponderance of the grade 7 criteria. And again, there have been historical grade 6 to grade 7 promotions where applicants haven't had a PhD. Reapplying if unsuccessful. So again, there are times where you can reapply within 2 years. So grade 6 to grade 7 applications, you can reapply in the next year, but for other grades, you can reapply in the following year with support from the Vice Principal and Head of College. But again, as Shelley mentioned, just thinking if you are reapplying within the next year, just thinking about what's changed within your application to increase your chance of being successful this second time round. COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 means I can no longer apply. But again, this will be taken into account. So if people have had periods of time being redeployed, doing different roles, that will clearly appear on your application form. So again, it's important to make sure that that's accurately recorded on the application form, and to discuss this in the pre-text. You can talk about how COVID-19 might have impacted on you and your role. Again, just being clear about that and providing commentary around this. Okay, so that was all I had wanted to say about the myths. And I'll hand over to.
Thanks. I'm Catherine Gibson. So I was promoted in the last round from grade 7 to grade 8. So I just thought it would be helpful to go through a few of my experiences. And I was actually in this session last year when it was Nye who gave his overview from how he got to grade 8, and that was really helpful. So fingers crossed I can do the same for you. So I actually thought it might be just helpful to give you a little bit of my background. So my PhD was back now in 2015 in environmental economics, and I've actually been at Glasgow since 2018 as a postdoc, but until last year I was actually over in the School of Biodiversity, One Health and Veterinary Medicine, and I came over as a lecturer to SHW last August. And I kind of wanted to, at this point, really make the most of the promotion workshops and what's being offered in SHW, because I hadn't realised that all this was out there when I was over in Botham, and actually talking to colleagues there, they weren't aware of all this support that we have in offer, like in the School of Health and Wellbeing. So just really use what's being offered to you, and don't be nervous to go to the promotion, because actually it wasn't really even talked about in Botham. So to come here, be in a really different environment where this is so supported by your line managers and going up the school, so just let that give you confidence as a starting point, really. This has kind of been covered already, and I thought it would be, but just first off, really make use of the academic promotion portal. You can already look back at the 2024 one, that's still out there. So one thing I would say is, even though it doesn't open until January, just start looking now at these different criteria and putting that evidence together. It does take a decent amount of time, like Francis was saying. Treat it as a grant application and putting those different sections of evidence together. Like they said, so really familiarize yourself with the grade and track that you're going for. I found it helpful to actually print it out as a paper copy that I could cross-check as I was starting to write everything up, and just double check all your key documents. So the application form, your CV, and give your line manager and further up just awareness that they need to provide this supporting statement for you as well, just so that they've got plenty of time. So these were kind of my practical tips. So like I've just said, start early, so download the forms, start looking at your different achievements and collating evidence. You can also, I found this really helpful last year, you can get access to previously successful promotion forms. Is that still on offer this year?
I think there are some Susan's got.
Yeah, there probably are, and I imagine we can get them if
Yeah, I said that mine could be, and I just found it really helpful just to see the structure and kind of the written style, like Francis was saying, just making sure that it's readable to people outside of your discipline. I'll touch on that a little bit more in detail. For me, my line manager was invaluable, so Emma, so I had early conversations with her about whether it was realistic or not to go for this round. In my case, it was. And then I kept her really engaged, so pretty much. So Emma actually went through 3 drafts with me. So I think I got the first draft to her by the end of January, and she did 2 more revisions after that. And keeping her in the loop, and so that knowing that Emma had these deadlines so that she could put it in her diary, because, you know, the higher up we go, everyone's super busy. That was really beneficial. So yeah, get your line manager engaged early. This was really helpful for me. So I'm very interdisciplinary, and coming to School of Health and Wellbeing as an environmental economist was quite different for the school. And what I needed to be able to do was sell the benefit of this research that I'd done in quite a different discipline to those more senior within the school that might not be aware of this. So for me, it really helped to look at myself and my research and what I've been doing in terms of my learning and teaching practice as part of, firstly, the school strategy. So I really spent some time looking to, okay, what's going on in School of Health and Wellbeing right now? What are kind of the next big priorities for the school, and how does my work align with that? And that just helped me to sell myself a little bit more generally. So ones that it's really worth looking at and reminding yourself of is the MVLS, the College Futures. So particularly around health inequalities, and for me, it was in the planetary health theme. But also the wider university strategy, just worth looking at Glasgow changing futures and what's going on there, and just seeing, does your work relate to that? How can it benefit the school and the wider university? So that was something that Emma really worked with me on as part of my application. A big thing I learned was writing up my publications. So in my first draft, when I gave it to Emma, she was like, no one outside of your discipline is going to know what you've written here and why it's novel and things. So she really encouraged me to go back to basics. A big thing, because all my work is co-authored, Emma suggested looking at this authorship statement, and I've given the link here. And it just gives you a really clear way of saying what your contribution to the literature, to that piece of work is. So in terms of the methods, the analysis, and it gives you a percentage. And that way, Emma said it was quite quick for the panel to read that through, because it was then consistent throughout my different publications there. You could see it. And again, just the context for inclusion, the papers that were right in terms of the school and the university strategy, but also for me, it was a lot of my work was in environmental economics journals. It was actually just giving essentially a translation for what would be a similar health-based journal. So what would be the equivalent for someone in School of Health and Wellbeing? So I appreciate that might not be that relevant to most of you here, but if you're kind of from that interdisciplinary background, then that was useful in that way. Cover this already, so really go back, make sure you're hitting those ref criteria. Again, that was something that Emma really pushed me to do. And like I've said, aligning with the wider school and the university strategies. I really made the most of these additional sections. So like we were saying, you need to, it's meet a preponderance of criteria, so 4 out of the 7. So for me at the time of applying, I had a very low research income because I'd been over in Botham and I wasn't eligible to apply for grants till coming here. But since joining the team, I was able to be part of several UKRI grants that were in preparation, or we just got the confirmation of the award through, but it was not yet on the system in any way. It wouldn't be before the application process was complete. So I made the most of that kind of additional information box there to say, yes, the grant income might not be there, but it is coming, and just drawing attention to it. And it was the same for PGR supervision for me. So again, in Botham, as a grade 7, we weren't eligible to supervise on PhDs, but I had done an awful lot of work as a mentor for master's students and undergraduate students. So that was just a way of saying, yes, I might not hit the income average, but I have done PGR supervision just in a different way. So it's just being able to use that additional information section wisely. Again, so you do at the end of your form, you have this kind of final summary statement that is like your last chance to sell yourself to the panel. So what I would use, so really summarize your main messages from each section and use those words, those kind of key phrases that are on the criteria for each section, and draw back to those. So essentially it then becomes a checklist for the panel saying, yes, okay, they've reminded me they have hit this tick. And you're meeting all those sections, and just be confident with it. You know, you're all working really hard, you're doing great research and great teaching, and see it as a chance to reflect on that. Because when I started my application, I was quite nervous and unsure that I'd meet everything. And actually, as you document it, you do realise, you know, you have been working hard, and you deserve to go for this and have the support of your line manager. So yeah, just to finish off, so it's about this alignment to these criteria. You don't have to meet every single one. So just key takeaways. So like we said, keep a track of your achievements, keep documenting them, and seek your mentorship and feedback early and often. And I'm happy to stay in touch after today and share my forms from last year if that's up to anyone, or take any questions.
So thank you for that. That was really helpful. I think everybody has spoken today. Happy to take any questions that people may have that in relation to that, because I know we kind of rushed through it. But I thought what was really interesting is what I had said about treating it like a grant application or like a paper. It wasn't just the fact that it's going to take you all that time to put the information together. You want your line manager to do it and have time to have multiple iterations, okay? Because you're not going to get it that it will be successful if you just have a single draft. So you need to have it drafted. Somebody goes and gives you your critical friend, your line manager goes through it and tells you, and then you redraft it, and you go back and you may have to redraft it again. So treat this like you would a paper, like you would a grant application, something that takes a bit of time and multiple iterations to get it right. Because you may say, oh, it looks good, but it may not be as convincing as it should be. They do adhere very strongly on the panel, just to say, to the DORA guidelines. So don't be worried if you've not got a New England Journal panel for something that's an impact factor of 50 or things like that. But I do think contextualizing the journal a little bit, like Catherine done, is good. But I think you have to bring out the things that we judge the paper by in terms of its originality, its novelty, the difficulty of doing the work. You know, if you've done work with a homeless population, it's actually difficult, or seldom heard, but it's difficult to get how methodologically robust or rigorous it is, and the kind of so what bit of the work does it actually make a change. So if you're putting in a paper that's a protocol or a pilot trial, that's good. We need to do that kind of work, but that's probably not going to be a wow paper because it's not going to change practice or things like that. So you want to be something that you can say has made a bit of a difference. Remembering it all also, you don't need to tick every one of those headings, because sometimes people are a bit demoralized and say, oh, I'll never make that teaching line, or I'll never make that outputs line because I don't really have something. That's fine if you make the other categories, the other boxes. So I think that's really important as well. I don't know if it's okay. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
It's questions. Everybody can answer questions. So I'm just kind of up here to direct it where it needs to go. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this has been really useful. I've got a very specific question about papers or publications for inclusion in the promotion application. I was advised by a more senior colleague in our unit that you can only count papers where there's fewer than 15 authors, and that if there's more than 15 authors, then it wouldn't be counted towards promotion, but I've looked for that in amongst the guidance and I can't find anything about that anyway. So is that a myth? Is it? Yeah. What's the deal?
I mean, I think it is a myth. I think it depends though on your contribution. So a paper will be judged, they'll be judged on your contribution. And so that bit that Catherine put in, where it said what was your roles in the paper, then that's really important. It comes probably a bit from REF, that if you had more than 15 people in the authorship, you could still submit it to REF, but you had to say what your contribution was. And that had to match, because people would check on the REF panel. Often papers actually look at the contribution statement, and what you said had to match that, because if they just kind of said you collected the data and did nothing more, and you said, well, I conceptualized it, but if that's not there on the paper, then they would pick that up. And actually REF actually then wrote back to the colleges and to the universities and actually audited some of those to check with co-authors that people had it. So it is a little bit more dubious, and I think it also depends on your role. So if you're first author or last author on a big thing, obviously that would be strong. I think it's when you're in the middle and your contribution is not clear. I think it's probably harder to be convincing that this paper, your work really was pivotal, if it's like 50 people and it's there. But it kind of depends. For instance, if you're the health economist on a big trial and there's 50 people and actually it's the health economic, where you've got pivotal and you can say what that is, then that could be okay. But I think you just have to kind of look at it, and I think seek guidance from more senior colleagues about what they think and what they think it's like, that's convincing. Basically, it has to be something you've made a really major contribution to.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Can I just ask, Shelley mentioned the 4 out of 700, so the criteria. Do you have to match every criteria within it? Like all the different lines, within each criteria?
Not necessarily every bit of it, but I mean, I think you really are looking to think that you've nailed that criteria pretty much down. So if you have the outputs, you're going to have 2 output. It depends what your grade is. If it was going for a professorial thing, it would be you'd have to have, they'd be looking for multiple, 6 outputs, and they'd be looking for those being 3 and 4 stars. So it kind of depends, what grade you're at. But I think you have to look at that. If you're looking for income, it's going to have to be, depending where you are, if it's professorial, it's above the median of the Russell group, or it's above the average. So I think it slightly depends. I think some of the other ones, like leadership, they give multiple examples because you could show that in multiple ways. I think if you just had one example, it probably might be. But I think they give multiple things because those ones are probably a little bit more open to interpretation, what's meant by that. And that's why it's good, again, to have independent people look at it and say, does that seem convincing or not? But some of them are a little bit more straightforward, like the number of PhD students you've supervised, is that, and how does that compare with the Russell group? Because they actually have those criteria. How it tells you what the Russell group are, it tells you whether you have to be above, depending what grade you're going for, the median, the upper quarter, lower, and you just have to look at that factually. I mean, essentially, I've only been on, this will be my, I've only been on these panels once because I had to stand in just by chance for Jill. And I think the main thing I would say is literally all the raters on the panel, they just go through that criteria. They say, yes, met, not met, not met. And then they look across, well, if it's unanimous, but then if there's one dissenter, well, why are you dissenting? So that then the discussion, but they actually just look at it pretty objectively like that. I kind of think it really is quite standard. So it is that checklist. So you really need to look at it. Now, of course, some of those are a little bit subjective about outputs, what's the quality and things like that. But I think that's why getting a bit of input and guidance from others is probably really important.
I just wanted to highlight, there's a couple of messages in the chat.
Oh, right, okay. Chat.
I'll put that here.
And then it went.
Sorry, chat, for not answering them right away, not seeing them, but we'll get to them now.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get some examples of circumstances where the 12+ months in post criterion has been waived in the past? I think you would have to just email Shelley. I think she'd be able to tell you that. So I think, as I say, I don't know that, and we would keep that kind of information, but HR would be able to tell you. So I didn't just email her directly, She is very good, and she will get back to you. As guidelines are only updated infrequently, but the emphasis is on what you've done since the last promotion. Is it possible to reference a paper that was referenced in current guidelines but was used in previous successful promotion application? That answer will probably be no. I'm going to say it depends, because they're looking at what you've done in the last 6 years. So, you know, it has to be in the last 6 years. So if it comes out in a guideline that's cited this year and it's an older paper, then that would be a definite no. I think they are looking for things that take you to the next level. So I think you have to be cautious about looking at that, and they would want to look for progress. And it kind of looks less good if you've got a paper that you already got promotion with on the last time, because they're wanting to say, have you gone forward with that? So I would be quite cautious about that as well. And then, have staff without PhDs ever been successful in applying to grade 8? I have never heard of that. I think I would certainly put it to Shelley. I can say for definite that grade 7, 6 to 7 has definitely happened, and I've actually helped some members of our staff achieve that, but I'm not aware about it for grade 8. So again, I think that's another one just to put to Shelley in HR. I don't know if that's about.
Sorry, just jump in. I'm pretty sure there is someone in the school, I would want to name or anything, but they're band 8. I don't know what alignment they were, but band 8, no PhD. So there might be some kind of thing.
So I think possibly is the answer to that one, but I would just check with HR on that one. So I'm not giving you a list. Yeah.
Can I be annoying and ask two questions?
Yes.
Probably quite straightforward. The first one was looking at the timetable. Just want to clarify that there's applications to be submitted to head of school, and then the 10th of March is the application deadline. Does this mean that we need to submit something in advance for your benefit to be able to have pleasure reviewing our application?
It has to come in advance because you need a supporting statement from the head of school.
That's going to be from you.
Yes. So it's not possible for me to do, let's say, 100 sporting statements on the night of so I mean, it's going to have it before. And what I tell people to do is it should be your line managers that does a first draft of that supporting statement, because they know you and know you far better and will know the details, and you can speak with them about that supporting statement, and they will send it to me. However, I have to agree with what they've put in that supporting statement and modify it accordingly. So I will be going through every single. So it's not that I just take what people say and put it through, because it goes to college. So they've seen what I've written, and I have to make sure that I can, when I'm sitting on that panel, that they can say, "What were you thinking of?" So that factually it's correct, and that I think it. That needs to be in good time.
I had a feeling last year when the portal opened, we got an email that said, yes, the deadline is the 10th of March, but it actually needs to be in.
There'll be an internal deadline earlier than that.
All of that.
So you will be I think. You'll definitely be.
I think for the school.
Right. Thank you. There was one other slightly smaller question. Thank you very much for that. The other one was, I just thought it was slightly consistently, the presentations were all fabulous, by the way, excellent speakers. But there was one speaker said, use bullet points. Another one said, avoid lists. Is there any kind of comment that you can maybe say about how best, or is it just individual differences in how to go about applying the formatting to use essentially?
Yeah. I mean, I would. So, in my experience, when I've had people do it, is to have some text, but sometimes you can have some bullet points, so you can say, I have done this, that, and the next thing, and here are some examples, which can be bullet points.
Right.
You want to make it so it's very clear, but it doesn't need to be a convincing narrative. So I wouldn't say bullet points only, but I do think you could have, sometimes of it. I guess what I'm saying is you want factual information as well, and not just kind of like waffling. So this is very interesting. People really liked, I think you have to kind of, give some facts and figures. And I thought your examples that you had up was quite, like your contribution to a paper. I got the help get the funding. I helped conceptualize. I collected the analysis. I did the first draft of the paper. So quite factual at that. You could say, below, you know, I made a major contribution below are the key things I did. It was those things that might be bullet points there, but I think you have to have a bit of a retro. So it's a little bit of a mix, I would say.
Thank you.
But
Or new question.
yes. Does each PhD count as one regardless of percentage supervisor? Because on short-term contract, you're not allowed to be the main supervisor. So you need to have a lot of PhDs with 10 each. Thank you. So yes, this is the PhD students do not count as one. It is counted as a percentage, and that's what's put against the Russell group. So that's the percentage allocation to you. It's interesting though that you say it has to be 10 because you're correct. If you haven't supervised somebody to completion, then you can't be the first supervisor. But actually, it doesn't mean that you have to be 10%. So if you've got two supervisors and somebody's the principal, the other, it could be 60-40, for instance, it doesn't be 10. Having said that, I'm sometimes 10 or 20% something because maybe we've actually got 4 supervisors and that can happen. So you can be like that. But sadly, it is the percentage. And I do sometimes say, I sometimes feel that's a bit unfair because of all the efforts. Sometimes it's not the best representation, but that is the rule for the university. The table shown earlier, it looked like the next step on from senior research fellow is professor. Is that right, or is it reader? So, well, it could well be reader is the next one, but you don't need to go like senior lecturer, reader, professor. So some people have gone senior lecturer, reader, professor. Some people, I went from senior lecturer to professor. So you don't need to always go through the reader stage. So just saying that again, that's a discussion worth having. And looking at the criteria again, too. I think that's all those questions there. Is it?
The other one. Again on papers. So earlier on, Shelley mentioned that you can include pre-University of Glasgow work within the additional comments box for grants and I've just written achievements here. Does papers factor into that? So can you include pre-University of Glasgow papers if you've not been with the university for more than a few years? Does that count, or do they have to go in an achievements, a comments box?
I would have thought, I think you should actually email Shelley just to check that. I would have thought it would still count. Where if so supposing you came in a certain grade here and 2 years ago you had a Lancet paper, I would have thought you'd be able to put that in if you had a role because it's about where you're.
You can't put in those papers. I did that on my application a couple of years ago. It's fine.
Okay, great.
There you go. Answer right away. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, but the main thing is ask for help from your seniors and line managers and other senior staff and get input. And it's good to get a few people looking at something and get that feedback the way that we do with papers, and we send them around multiple people because you'll just get ideas and things like that. And it's about, the main thing is to be quite punchy, clear on what you're saying, because these guys were having to look at lots and lots of applications. And the easier you can make it for people to see whether you meet those criteria, the more likely they're going to say you make it. So you want to make it obvious, and you also just want to make it clear. People don't necessarily know your discipline, so I think somehow saying this is really important because, and making it seem convincing in relation to that. We're wishing you all every success. Thank you for coming around.
So this session has been recorded, so these resources will be available on the Athena Swan Career Progression Subgroup's website, where there's also other resources there that can help you. You can also get in contact with that group or with the presenters today to assist you in your applications. And there's also another group, the Research Staff Assembly. They're running some events to support promotions in January, so you can check their website for more information also. And yeah, good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
A really good application.